One thing I've been asking people about that is topical is just about AI in general. I think the most interesting thing to hear is from different people in their different careers, how they think it's going to impact them in the future and their particular type of job.
I've gone into operations, so
Right.
I'm not in a classic market research role anymore.
Exactly. You talked a lot about the choice you made to switch one time in your career, and then you did it again another like 7 years ago or so.
Yep.
Now it's been
About 5 years.
5 years.
Yep.
It's been a bit of time that you said, I'm going to move out of market research. I'm going to go into operations, and I'm going to focus my career all around that. It's a difficult change. So anyway, in the operations space, what do you see as some of these new large language models or any of the AI tooling, or what's the way that kind of career could be impacted?
I would have some very easy answers if it was still market research, because I think we know what that space is like. And actually, you could make an argument that AI is, maybe rendering a lot of classic market research jobs or positions. Are those needed anymore, right? But moving market research, maybe some of the analytical sides of things. Analyzing the data. I think AI is able to analyze data in a much quicker way, maybe. So maybe those standard analytical skills in a sense.
Do you think of that more for qualitative type stuff, like reading through a transcript and kind of summarizing what the person says?
I think
or are
so.
You thinking more...
I think even numbers wise, all of it. I think AI can look for trends. Whether it's qualitative or quantitative, I think AI can look for trends in a much more holistic way. Be able to, like some of the classic stuff we were doing, connecting the dots, right, to primary research and secondary research. Like AI can do that so much quicker, right, and just tap so much more secondary out there. Like I think the limits are for a person to do that versus AI, much different scope.
That's a good point. I hadn't thought of the impact in our job. We were asked to read or be aware of or disseminate among people a lot of this kind of secondary research stuff that services were posting, different research companies were creating, and Intel subscribes to, and then you can get value out of. People can read it when they have some kind of topic that comes up that's relevant to it, and that's great. But if that's all just going into ChatGPT or one of these kind of large language models, a search engine, it just knows it, and you're just asking the questions, and it's just spitting back the fresh, right data from those things. My mailbox was constantly full of spam, basically, that Intel was paying a lot of money for. To get all this research all the time. It's just like, there's no way I could read it all or care about it all or even find it useful. Like there's a lot of stuff in there that's just not useful to me most of the time. Occasionally maybe, the AI could do a better job of reading all that stuff and keeping up.
Totally. And I think from that standpoint too, I think it can render a lot of primary research needs, basically they're not needed anymore.
How so?
I think a lot of times when we're doing primary research is to answer questions that we don't know the data for, right? Or that data is not available. But I think the data's out there. I just don't think, as people, it's just hard. We have probably our scope is a bit limited in terms of finding the data. I think if it was up to AI would find the data. And I think there's a lot of questions that we do research for that we might not need to do research for anymore because AI will find it. So classically, the research side, very much, it's interesting. On the operations side, business operations tends to be very specific to the team, the organization, the strategies that are happening. It's hard for me to see an immediate application for AI. I think AI can be tapped for some, for operations, there's always this kind of general part to operate. There's a generalist side to operations where you're just, okay, we have a legal question. What's the answer in this? We have a specific legal issue. What's the policy? Or, we have a budget. We got to manage our budgets. All right, how do we close this? We have a gap here. I think AI could be there for that and answer those kinds of generalist questions. But when it comes to designing a new policy or a new process, which is just a classic part of business operations, it's very specific to that time or that question, that area. I think AI can help kind of start the process, maybe to borrow back from the classic market research. It's like, okay, like what's out there to get me started, but then to take it to like a final level. I think there's just an ingenuity part that maybe I'm just not aware that AI can do that I think operations is still going to do. It's almost like asking the question, like, can AI create a strategy? Like, can AI create a strategy for something? I don't know.
Disturbingly well, yes.
Or is it the right strategy, right? So anyway.
Yeah, that's the question.
Because
What
I
is
think
the right thing?
right, because I think part of operations and strategy work too is, it's not like there's one answer, right? So
Right.
part of it's selling the strategy through. Can AI sell the strategy
And
through to other people?
executing it, like we talked about last time, a lot of it's just the execution.
Right,
That you have to choose something and go do it.
right,
And so you can get ChatGPT or some other language model to spit out whatever you want. You tell it to
right,
pretend to be a great strategist
right,
and then ask it the question and it'll write something
right,
pretty solid for
right,
you.
right.
And then internalizing that, making it your own and going off and doing it is a whole different question.
And
You
a
can
lot of
write
it,
documents all day.
oh, totally. And a lot of it is getting other people aligned to it and doing it, right? Because a lot of your work is not independent. It's all about getting other people to follow along,
Yeah.
to do what you build or to the policies or that kind of thing. There's a certain amount of collaboration and communication and selling, if you will, quote unquote selling,
Yeah.
that AI, I don't think can do that yet.
The classic kind of question is if it can write your paper for you in school, right? The professor can ask you a question, you send it on to the AI, it writes a great paper for you. Obviously, you didn't learn anything through doing that. So, same thing in business. If you get the AI to write the strategy for you, now what? Like, you didn't really get bought into the strategy. You don't really know how it works or why you're doing different parts of it necessarily, or really remember it all because you didn't spend the mental effort to come up with the whole flow of what's going on.
Exactly.
And I don't know what that's going to do
Well,
to us as a people and how we.
but I also don't see how that could be delivered. How you could execute, because executing a policy, a process, a strategy requires you to be able to adapt too. And if you're going to adapt something, you have to know it. And in your example right there, a person doesn't know it. They're being told it. And so there's a certain level of experience that you have to drive something forward. We're talking about things that get driven forward over weeks and months and maybe even sometimes years.
Mm-hmm.
This isn't something that happens just in a day. And so in order to do that, you have to know it. You have to live it. And if you just get a chatbot to spit out an answer for you, I don't think you know it enough to drive it forward.
Yeah. I think the flip side I could remember from my work experience too is how many times people focus in on like one slide, or one data point, one chart, one which could have a great insight on it, a great look at the sales on this certain thing, and wow, that really makes me think we need to build more of that thing. But a lot of strategy stuff in our big strategy decks would get boiled down to the 10 slides, the 5 slides, and really in there's one or two key slides, one or two key ideas that everybody hinges on and all the decisions are made based on. So couldn't it come up with those, it's like, are the people really that good? I guess that's the real question. If they're really focusing on this one, if they're making all the decisions based on this limited piece of information or some perception.
Yeah, the thing though that you don't get from AI is people are going to poke holes in it, right? So even though it's like three or 4 points that you're driving forward at the end of the day, you have to survive people poking holes in it. And again, to me, in the corporate world, it's not just one person driving something forward. It's like you have to have a lot of people on board and a lot of people to drive it forward. Yeah. How do you answer all those questions if you don't know? Coming back to the experience side, you have to know what you're delivering, and AI is not going to deliver that knowledge to you.
Yeah.
They'll deliver the answer to you. So then if somebody asks this question about it, how do you answer that question? You go back to you go back to the AI and say, hey, this question, you keep asking it questions and it keeps answering.
That's the trick, is going to be meshing the two together, I think, is learning how to work with it.
Right.
And because the tool is super useful, it gives you some great information and great answer really quickly.
Right.
But when you need to go answer the follow-up question, how do you do it?
Yeah. Yeah.
And we're going to have to figure that out.
Yeah. I think what I've learned in the operations space, this is, again, a cliche, right? But there's an art side and a science side. So I think the science side, AI can do. The art side, the kind of the intuitive side, that side, I don't think AI can do. So I think there's a marriage needs to happen to drive that forward. And I think that's where you still need the people, is the art of operations, the art of strategy.
Yeah, sounds good. I think we're going to have a lot of learning to do over the next 5 years.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thanks for listening. Please hit the thumbs up button and subscribe. It really helps me grow the channel and get the word out to more people.